Reiki blessings, everyone. This is Sherry, and thank you for coming back and joining the Running on Reiki podcast. Today, I have a most divine treat for you, which is a channeled guided meditation with Goddess KWAN YIN. I'm also going to share the history, her story of KWAN YIN, and how she became an ascended master and Buddha Vista, as well as some personal shares for how she has shown up in my life and the lives of others. We'll be learning more about the mantra that you can chant, Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the jewel is in the lotus. We'll talk about that principle. What does that actually mean? And dive deeper into the qualities of KWAN YIN, which are utter mercy, compassion, kindness, and unconditional love for all, no matter our feelings or our failures, or what we believe are failures. Mercy and compassion, grace for all. KWAN YIN is the goddess of the heart chakra amplified into infinity. So any heart chakra stones that you might have, the jade, pink quartz, rose quartz, watermelon quartz, green aventurine, you can utilize during this meditation to call in her energy. KWAN YIN is known as the goddess of 1,000 arms, 1,000 names, and 1,000 eyes. And if you do your research, you will find that she has many stories that have passed down through time, all of them more beautiful than the next, because she is here to comfort us. And as a Buddha Vista, she has chosen to stay hovering about the earth plane instead of moving on to nirvana, a nirvana that she earned. And when you hear her backstory, you will understand why. She still chooses out of mercy to stay and help every single soul on earth until we come to a place of complete love, unity, peace, and harmony amongst ourselves and within our own lives. So all of her arms and eyes are here to watch over you and to comfort you and to hold you close. Like the lotus, she has risen up from the muck and the mud. Through challenge, she has grown in strength and resilience and purity of mind, body, and soul. And she is here to show you how to do that as well. One of her symbols is a vase, a small vase, but a powerful vase, because it is filled with holy dew that transmutes the tears of humans as she captures them in the vase. So if you have a small vase in your possession, you can even set up an altar for this meditation with a picture of her or a drawing of her or a poem or a prayer that you write to her with some of the pink or green crystals that resonate for you. If you have anything with a dragon or a dragonfly, an oracle card, a painting, you can bring that into the meditation, or perhaps focus on it as you're listening to me and let yourself go into that world, into that imagery. Let it assist you with the meditation to go on a vision quest. KWAN YIN, sacred divine mother of grace, compassion, mercy, selflessness. She is always around whenever you call on her to comfort anyone who is lost, grieving, suffering, abused, mentally anguished, downtrodden, or a minority of any kind. She is the one who hears your prayers. She is the one who will free you from the underworld of your own self-contained purgatory, or perhaps a purgatory you feel a situation or a person has put you in. She is the one that you pray to when you are looking for fertility and to bear children or to bear creative projects. So get yourself comfortable now in a seated position. Maybe you want to sit in the yoga lotus position with your legs folded in front of you and your hands open, palms up on your knees. Perhaps you want to lay reclined. Perhaps you want to set up an altar, or you want to have that painting or some sort of statue or altar or visual image in front of you as we go into the world, into the beauty and the majestic healing of KWAN YIN. right after our sponsored segment talking about how important it is for you to start your own podcast and get your voice out into this world. Reiki blessings. Take a deep breath in and out, opening and expanding, breathing in peace. Breathing out the strife of the day, opening and expanding, in and out, peaceful, loving breaths. I send the Reiki symbols of the highest, purest love, light, and healing directly to your heart chakra center. Keep softening into your breath, relaxing into your body. Chakra, Seiki, Honsha Ze Shonen, Daikomio, Merkafakalishma, Raku, and the violet flame of transmutation. Breathing, cleansing, clearing, refreshing. Breathing, soften, soften. Keep softening into your breath. From the center of your heart, feel the Reiki love and light expansion radiate up and down your entire spine, invigorating and purifying each of your chakras. Root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown. Breathe. With open heart, we now call in KWAN YIN, Asian goddess of mercy, compassion, grace, and unconditional love. See her in your mind's eye. Let her gesture how she will for you. Make a choice to allow her in. Feel her gentle feet padding around your heart chakra as if it was a koi pond. She is tiptoeing lightly, her beautiful, sweet lips pursing and smiling at you. Her eyes twinkle with an eternal golden flame. She wants you to know she sees you. She understands all you've endured, how hard you've tried, how much you've given, how deeply you care, how you desire to live your authentic self and genuinely love yourself, how you ache for the world's woes. From her body extends infinite arms, hands, fingers, each hand an all-seeing eye throbbing in its palm. She is here to see you just as you are, to comfort you with a mother's miraculous healing love, to hold you dearly, to massage your heart and bring it back to life where you need it most. Walk into her arms. Let her hold you. Soothe your worries into peaceful pillows. Lay your head upon her motherly bosom. Feel and deserve the love you need. There are willow trees all around you, and they bend, resilient with grace. Sunshine streams down, rainbow colors flashing all around. The fish are bright, bold energy, beautifully leaping from the cool, safe waters. They are orange and yellow, black and white, iridescent creams swimming in circles of serenity. Green foliage dances in a light breeze. Pink lotuses lay calm on the pond surface, as if they are deep sleeping after a long trial. Dragonflies flit about you, beckoning you to just let go. Let go. Drift, float, levitate. This is a moment of a living poem. Breathe it in. Find the still point. Settle into it. Claim it. There is mercy here at the pond. Mercy for all. Mercy for you. Mercy you can bestow upon yourself or others in your life or in the world. You can choose to become a priestess of mercy. KWAN YIN motions for you to touch the waters. Lean down. Lean in. Choose to inhabit this wonderfully light and bright space. It is your home. It's your birthright. She hands you her jade vase. Within it is her tears, alchemized now to holy dew. Cup some water from the mercy pond in one hand. Pour it into her vase. Swirl the potion into one healing tincture. As KWAN YIN watches over you in tutelage, you are transformed before her eyes. Your old garb you wear falls easily away. Now you stand steady, barefooted before her. The air ruffles white upon white chiffon robes around you. A real lotus flower grows straight out of your heart, its pink petals extending into infinity, grasping the light of love, bringing it back to the earth plane. Breathe. KWAN YIN links arms with you. She walks over to an adjacent pond. This pond has black waters. There is no sunshine, no lotus, and no fish. The skies overhead are gray, but there is a small break in the cloud cover, a peak of blue behind it all. This blue is a glimpse of hope. that can open up with the right energy. But you feel sad. Where are we, you ask her. This, she says, is the pond of suffering. This is where humans forget their light within, where they sacrifice their peace for false power. Here is war, division, segregation. This is where you judge yourself and others, manipulate, degrade, get lost in the losses, grief, sorrows of your life, forgetting the beauty and ability to live again. These are what the waters look like and feel like when you tell the same old, nonsensical stories. The waters are then mired in the muck of false control, begrudging and degrading of yourself and others, all the ways you hurt each other or live from a place of fear, makes this pond dead inside. How can I help? You ask her. You take a deep breath as she says, cry. Cry your true tears of compassion for a better world into my vase. So you allow yourself in this moment to deeply feel the pain of the human race. And then she says to you, do not become it, just transmute it with your new powers. So your tears fall and fall into the vase, yet you hold the immense brilliance of the light of love and that power in your heart. The vase is your heart. You pour your giving heart into it. And a magic has occurred. KWAN YIN looks at you and says, you, child, have done well. Your caring is the antidote. Now pour the potion into the pond of suffering. You feel so relieved now that there is hope, that you can make a difference, that each person together caring makes a difference. And you see your importance now. You begin to pour her love, your love, into the pond of suffering, and you watch in awe as the waters clear. You can see to the very bottom now. You can see across the pond for miles and miles into new lands. Birds fly in every direction. Fish jump higher than life. There appears white, pink, blue, lavender lotuses, one for every human on earth. Dragonflies make intricate geometric patterns in the air. It is magnificent, and your heart is lighter and brighter than ever before. You are completely mesmerized and spellbound. This is even more beautiful than the pond of mercy. You look at KWAN YIN and you say, where are we now? Now, she says, we are at the pond of nirvana. You have used your heart to heal your world, to heal the world. Imagine if everyone on your planet cried real compassion and focused their energy on the actualization of nirvana. Oh, then what, you ask? what happens? She looks at you with graceful ease. Then, KWAN YIN says, the earth becomes the world you wish to inhabit through your unfaltering love, faith, and focus. You take a deep breath in and promise her that you will do your part to impart mercy for all the ways you have unknowingly caused suffering or see suffering caused in the world. She touches her third eye to your third eye. Feel the warmth of her light being merging with yours. So it is, she says. You say your farewells and gratitudes to her, bowing with deep respect. And now focusing on your body, on your breath in your body, begin to come slowly back into your body here in this room. And when you are ready, open your eyes to the light of your life. Remember who you are. Remember your true powers. Remember the gift that love is to heal all. Remember you are loved. You are love. Reiki blessings of the highest, purest love and light, healing, empowerment, alignment, and ascension. Okay, so you should be in a state of really calm, comfortable, peaceful levitation right now from that meditation. And I'm wondering if the best way to do this podcast moving forward would be to do the meditation first, since I do channel the meditation, and then get everyone who's listening into that state of awareness, expanded openness and consciousness, and then you're more relaxed and ready for the channeled messages that come in. Or perhaps that's just the way KWAN YIN wanted it to go this time. I usually just spontaneously do what feels intuitively right in the moment, as we all should in all moments of our life, and not really judge or double guess ourselves. But yes, I'm feeling that sometimes when a channeled guided meditation comes through like that, it really opens up a door, a portal within us to be a little bit more relaxed to receive and to merge and to remember who we are. I guess what I'm hearing is that sometimes we think that we have to know the backstory, because this is the way we've been programmed as a human, that we have to know the backstory, the history, the culture, who was KWAN YIN, before we actually tune into her. And that's not necessarily true. It's just part of our schooling that we think we need the information. And when you're working with the spirit world, it's not about information as much as it is guidance. It's not about, being able to answer a multiple choice question about her. It's about, do you feel her energy? And sometimes when we want to make that shift from the working mind, the thinking mind, into the more intuitive, creative, imaginative mind, it really is a good idea to do things like art, dance, movement, guided meditation, poetry, things that are a little bit more abstract, things that don't have absolute answers. That's one of the reasons that I've always loved poetry, reading poetry and writing poetry. Actually, my first book, Crowned, Becoming the Woman of My Dreams, The Missing Things Were Goddess Wings, that book is mostly prose and poetry. And it's self-published. You can actually find that book on Amazon, or you can find it in my dreamalittledesigns.etsy.com shop. That kind of free-flowing way that we write when we do poetry versus like a journal entry, it kind of helps shift us away from that analytical mind and more into like this cloud mind, this floating mind, this expansive mind, this I believe in magic mind, this I understand there's more than what I can just document and what I can just experience with my five senses, that there's so much more going on, so much more physicality and non-physicality within this dimension and other dimensions. So let me just give you a very brief summary of one of KWAN YIN's stories. And the reason I say that is because I did a lot of research on her because I just recently did a local goddess circle that I create and lead all around KWAN YIN. And I could have read for hours because she is one of the deities, that have extensive stories across time, different versions of her story. So the one that really stood out for me, because KWAN YIN is considered the Asian Mother Mary, the goddess of ultimate, utter compassion and mercy. And mercy really is the energy that we want to look at with her, because mercy means to forgive and to open your heart with compassion, no matter what has been said or done in any situation with any person. And as we all know, it's very hard to have mercy. Mercy is also in conjunction with the concept of suffering. So looking at situations and people in our lives or across our planet where there is extensive suffering, and this could be on multiple levels. It could be people who are born in poor regions, children who are starving, children who are abused, the homelessness situation in various countries, people who are born or end up having some sort of completely debilitating disease or health or mental health situation at some point in their life, people who lose young children or lose their spouse young. I don't think I really need to explain to you what suffering is, because it's part of the human condition, and we all will experience it in some form, individually and collectively. So KWAN YIN, she comes in those moments when you need a mother to hold you, and she holds you and says, I will absorb and take your suffering, and I will give you all the comfort and love in return to help you understand that you are resilient and that you will rise up from the suffering that occurs. And this is a side note, I'm not going to get off on a track with this, but my belief is that suffering is not something that is happening to us. We write everything in, since we are free will beings on this planet. We choose things from the great library when we come here, when we create our soul plan. And we do write suffering into our plan, because it is through suffering that we really learn how to have patience, how to get up, how to move forward, how to develop our inner strength and endurance, how to be compassionate toward other people then who are suffering in some way. And there are many great lessons and almost like heroic things that we rise to within us when we are in a place of suffering. If you think about it and you compare yourself to that lotus that's pushing up through that thick, heavy mud to bloom into this beautiful 1,000-petaled flower, each of those petals is an incarnation of a part of who you are. In totality, you are the lotus, the beautiful, perfect, pristine lotus reaching for the sun. And it's those moments as an earthling when we triumph over our emotions, our thoughts, our struggles, our patterns, our addictions, our obsessions, our worries, our programs. It's in those moments when we realize, even though there may be help outside of us, healers, therapists, things that we can do, it really, even with other people's help, it is our own, in the end, it is us who has to do it. If you're somebody who's going through addiction problems and you go through a rehab program, it is a wonderful, beautiful thing that you have the support of people who are trained, who have been there, etc. But in the end, it is you who has to do it. You still have to choose to follow that program, to follow this new ways of thinking, to get up every day and to choose your life first. And in the end, no matter what your struggle is, when you rise to the occasion, and even if it's hard and you get through that day, and you don't know how you got through that day, but you still got through that day, when you do that, there is no greater triumph. There is no greater raising of high frequency divine energy than when you as a human rise above your struggles. It doesn't mean that you ignore them, that you pretend they're not there, that it's easy. It's none of those things. In fact, it is probably the most painful, hardest thing you will ever do in your life. But when you do it and you turn around and you realize, I'm on the surface now, I'm floating on the surface, and I feel surrounded like that lotus by the sunlight of God, Goddess, illuminating me. And I remember the shadow, the murkiness below that I came and I rose up through. Well, that there is the moment. Those are the moments we are here for. We tend to think that we just want to be the lotus floating on the crystal pond. And we try to take shortcuts to get there. But the truth is, there are no shortcuts. We have to do the work. We have to push up. We have to want it. We have to believe in ourselves. And when you get to that, we have to trust ourselves. And we have to trust that God, Goddess, Spirit, our angels, our guides, our higher self, that they are all rooted and rooting for us. And they are pushing us up from those roots. Sometimes we don't feel like they're there assisting us, KWAN YIN is saying, because we don't believe in them. We don't even think they exist. We don't trust them. It is you that's consciously creating your reality. So when you shift your consciousness to tuning into that and trusting it, the flower begins to push and push and push. And it's not a pushing or a struggle up through the water. It's a striving. Our perspective and looking at everything through universal truth and spiritual eyes is going to get us to a different place, to the place that we want to be, than if we look at something as I am struggling or I am striving. Do you feel the difference in the energy between those two concepts? I am pushing, or I am resisting, or I am accepting, and I am flowing. Do you feel the difference in your body with those concepts? I am the flower that is tight and worried, or I am the flower that is opening and allowing. Do you feel the difference? When you grow and change and shift with flow and trust and belief, the miracle comes in. These are universal truths, and there's no bypassing them. But we live on a planet of duality. So we are allowed the option of, struggling, pushing, super ambition, doubt, worry, anxiety. We learn through that as well, because we will get there. We will learn through those lower energies. And they're not necessarily bad or good. They're just a different way to learn. But if you think about it, the times in your life when you just surrendered and you just let go and you said, I desire this, I know it is who I am, I will do what I can at the pace that I can with a flow and a trust and a peace in my heart. Those are the moments in life that the job came, or the friendship came, or the new home came. It's important to remember that there are no wrong choices. There are only choices. So there may be choices that get us someplace quicker, or at choices that are higher, that feel good, that feel more productive and feel more correct, more right. I don't even know if those are the right words, because they sound very, ego-based. There are choices that feel more in flow, in balance, in alignment with where we're going. And you know how those feel in your body. You know how those feel. They feel free. There's nothing that feels better than freedom within our mind and our body and our thoughts and our emotions and our aura and our personality than to move through the earth plane with a sense of, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I believe in divine timing, and I trust that I will get there. Powerful. That is true power. There is nothing more powerful than that. And what KWAN YIN is showing me is that the lotus, and you are the lotus knows that that is where it will end up. It may be starting out as a seed in the mud, but even within the seed in the mud, even as it's pushing up through the mud, even as it's growing, as it's expanding, as it comes to the surface, as it opens its petals toward the sunlight, in all stages, even before the seed of consciousness of that lotus has planted in that particular part of the mud in the pond, it already knows that it will be the 1,000-petaled lotus. And that's how you need to look at your own life as well. I already am everything I am going to be. And it's not even that I'm going to be it, I am it. And when you see your life that way, you're able to take a big, out breath. And that's when the freedom comes in. Okay, so let me just backtrack a little bit, because I just realized that I kind of went off on a little channeling tangent there, and I didn't actually tell you KWAN YIN's story. So let me do that. So the main story that really resonated with me was that KWAN YIN was a princess of a very wealthy, king. And her father, her name was Miao Shan. I hope I'm saying that right. And Miao Shan, Shan, if you want to research her story. And her father wanted her to marry someone that would help expand his wealth and expand his lands and his, partnerships with other kings. And KWAN YIN Miao Shan wanted to, who became KWAN YIN, the Buddha Vista, she wanted to marry someone who would help to provide healing and service to the world. So the only way that she could reckon it in her own mind would be if she would marry a doctor or a healer. And her father said no, it would have to be somebody that was wealthy and owned much land. And she refused to do that because she said, in truth, she didn't want to marry at all. What she wanted to do was to become a nun and to go to the temple and to serve God. So because she refused her father's wishes, he said, fine, I will send you to the temple, but I'm going to make sure that you endure much suffering there so that you will not like temple life. So what he did is that he told the monks that she was to be given all the hard chores, that she was to barely eat, that she was to work day and night with no assistance. And although those things did occur, they did not really faze her. And there's even a part of the story that there were many animals that would find their way into the temple and they would actually help her with her chores, which kind of Snow White-ish. I thought that part of the story was very interesting, because it's always interesting if you read cultural stories of God and goddesses and see how they kind of merge into like our modern day fairy tales and Disney stories and all that. So because she was undaunted by any of these punishments at the temple, and she was actually very, very happy there, her father sent an executioner to murder her. And that's right, I said her father did that. So part of the story is that when the executioner went there and he tried to behead her, he was not able to do it. And every time the axe would come toward her, it would just be deflected, because she had the powers to be able to do that. But over time, she was so merciful and compassionate, because she knew if the executioner did not complete his task, that her father would have him murdered. She thought to herself, I will just let him murder me. So what she did is she allowed for this to happen. And she then also agreed with her free will to karmically take on the karma that the executioner would be carrying for having murdered her. She absorbed that, which sent her into this supposed realm that was hell-like, where she was able to witness and experience and feel the suffering of all the people who went to this hell-like realm because of the things that they had done, horrific things that they had done within their human life. But instead of seeing them in this light of disgust, she opened her heart and was so merciful that she was able to she wanted to be able to heal these souls that were in this hell-like realm. And it was in that moment that she could have actually, according to legend, went to a place of nirvana because of the deep compassion and mercy that she had. But instead, again, of living in this sense of like being an ascended light being, she said that she would take on the role of being a Buddha Vista, which is a female Buddha, and that she would keep her soul and spirit around the earth plane so that she would then be able to watch over all the people of the earth and to help them and hold them in their times of suffering. So this is where the part of the legend comes in, where often she is depicted as having 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands, and within the hands, the palms of her hand are the eyes, meaning that she is able to see all that is happening, see all of the suffering of the world, and she's able to have the hands to then reach out and hold all of the people, all at the same time, across time, eternally. Some of the other symbology that KWAN YIN is associated with is the dragonfly, which to me would be a human creature form of the dragon. So you will see her with the dragon, a mythological dragon, or the dragonfly, which to me is just a small version of the dragon coming into our reality on the earth plane. Of course, dragons do, and I did a whole podcast on dragons. Dragons do also exist. They're just behind the veil, and they are still helping to protect planet Earth and using their energy to ground energy around the ley lines within the planet. So you also will see her associated with fish of any type, with ponds, with lotuses, and with koi fish. She's often, almost always pictured with a very tiny little vase that she holds. And this vase is supposed to be catching her tears as she cries them. And when her tears fall into the vase, they are alchemized into a holy dew, which you heard me talk about in the channeling. And that dew she then pours out across the earth plane, or she uses a willow branch from the willow tree, which is another symbol of hers. The willow tree being, as we all know, that of graceful resilience, being able to bend and sway with the changing winds or changing times. And so she uses the willow branch to take her alchemized tears and to flick them out onto the earth plane. Kuan Yin is associated with motherhood and children and fertility. So if you are looking to get pregnant, or you are praying for your child for some reason, maybe your child has an illness, she is a very special divine feminine goddess to work with. If you yourself are carrying what is called a mother wound, meaning that you had a difficult relationship with your mother, biological, adopted, etc., she is also a wonderful goddess to work with and pray with. You can set up an altar, you can meditate, you can write a letter to Kuan Yin, you can write a prayer to her, you can pray asking her to help you heal your mother wound, to understand your mother wound, and to know how to move forward without bitterness in your heart towards your mother. And forgiveness. You can't have mercy and compassion without forgiveness. So forgiveness is very much associated with Kuan Yin as well. Forgiveness is the first step before you can even get to mercy and compassion. The very interesting thing that I read about Kuan Yin is that even though she is shown with different symbols, that almost every depiction of her, in artwork and culture over time, she is always depicted as being barefoot. And I have a very interesting little personal share story about that. So when I did the local goddess circle a couple weeks ago, it was very hot in the mezzanine area where we do our circle. And right at the beginning of the circle, one of the ladies said, "Would it be okay if I took my shoes and socks off?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And it was very interesting because everybody followed suit. I certainly took mine off. And there were some people that went completely barefoot. There were a couple of people that decided to leave their socks on, but every woman at that circle took her shoes off based on the suggestion or the question of the first woman. And honestly, I did not put two and two together, but when I was getting into explaining to everybody the backstory of Kuan Yin, and we were going through the symbols, I was like, oh my gosh, when I got to the part about the bare feet, because I said, oh my gosh, hey, we all just took, I said that, yes, it's hot in here and we all want it to be a little bit cooler. I said, but I've been running these circles for years, and I have oftentimes been in situations when it's been a little hot in the room, and I've never had somebody suggest taking off their shoes before. And I just couldn't help but understand that that was Kuan Yin who prompted that first woman to say, hey, is it okay if I take my shoes off? And then the other woman just had this intuitive feeling like, yeah, that sounds good. I want to do that too. It was just so interesting to me that, remembering then and saying to the women, that's right, Kuan Yin is always pictured barefoot, that she found a way for all of us to also be barefoot. And I have to say that as the circle went on, that because her energy is so pure and gentle and pristine, but also very, very high frequency, we almost needed to have our shoes off and to have more of our skin, our flesh closer to the ground. That idea of when you put your foot on the ground, you are connecting to Mother Earth, and that grounding is that sense of stability, protection, safety. When you're working with these higher divine feminine energies, you often can have this very much like out of body floaty feeling. So it is important to find a way to ground yourself in your when you're maybe working with art with them, or meditation or song, or whatever it is that you're doing. Another interesting personal share story is about how I go about channeling the meditation. So when I'm doing it here on the podcast, I'm just doing it in the moment. When I'm doing it for the circles that I run in my community, I tend to do the channeling of the meditation at home, and so I light a candle, I play some music, I focus and merge my energy with whatever form of spirit that I am collaborating with, communicating with, and I sit and I kind of auto write and I type it out, and that way I can print it out later and have it to actually read at the circle. And then if something comes through in that now moment that spirit wants to add, then I will certainly do that in the now moment. But it just feels more comfortable for me to be able to do that, because I do so much other channeling as the circle goes on, as we're talking, sharing stories, that I can get very, tired by the end of the circle. So if I've at least channeled the guided meditation, it's just one less thing that I'm channeling right there in that moment. But anyway, so when the meditation that I just did for you at the beginning of this podcast was the one that I channeled before the local goddess circle. And I had not done any research on KWAN YIN yet, or minimal research. And when I felt her and saw her come into my third eye vision, I saw a pond and koi fish. Those were the very first two images that came to me. And it was later, when I was reading more in depth about, her various symbols, that I found out that she is associated with fish of any type, as well as koi fish, because she also was revered and honored by the fishermen in the Asian cultures. They would pray to her to ask for abundance when they were fishing. So those kind of things are also very confirming when you are a psychic intuitive, and I've had no prior knowledge. I did know certain things about her, that she was associated with the lotus, but I really did not know that she was associated with fish or fishermen of any type, and or koi fish. And here that was the image that she wanted to show me right off. And sometimes spirit will do that, so that then when you do read further or learn more, you have that aha moment and you're like, oh my gosh, I really did connect with her, because she was showing me that right from the beginning. Another magical story about when I channeled the meditation that you just listened to is that I was so completely, and I always am, it never gets old for me, but I was so completely blown away by what came through. And the concept that she handed me of these 3 ponds. And I didn't know there was going to be 3 ponds. I just kept typing what I was hearing and seeing. And this idea that first she took us to the pond of mercy, and then she showed us the pond of suffering, and the ways that we create suffering for ourselves and others. And then she took us to the pond of nirvana, which was even more beautiful. That was the ascension pond, when we ascend, our mercy creates the ability to go to the pond of nirvana. So after I channeled and wrote the meditation, I was going to go for a trail run, because I love to trail run. And I saw this crystal that had been sitting on my counter for quite a while. It was a crystal that I had left outside last summer, and I didn't know that it was a crystal that would be affected by the rain, and I left it out, and it eventually created a crack, and it just broke into 2 pieces. So as I was gathering my watch and my phone and everything I need to go running, I saw the crystal sitting on my counter where it's been for a while, because I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but I knew spirit would have a plan for it somewhere down the line. And KWAN YIN said to me, take that crystal with you to the canal. I want you to throw it into the canal. So I was like, okay, threw it in my purse with all of my other stuff. So when I got to the canal, I ran for a while, and then I got to an area where I felt it was time, she was saying it's time to work with the crystal. So I stood by the canal, and because the canal is lowered, the water level is lowered right now until springtime, I knew I was going to really have to heave these crystals good. I was going to have to give them a good heave to get them to hit the water. I did not want them to hit the bank where they would just be laying exposed in the dirt. I wanted them to hit the water and felt that they needed to hit the water. So again, I had two halves of one crystal, so two pieces. I'm not sure what the crystal was. It was a green crystal. So that's kind of, I'm forgetting the name of the crystal now, but honestly, green would be one of, KWAN YIN is a heart chakra goddess because she's working with empathy, compassion, forgiveness, self-love, love towards other people, healing. So the heart chakra would be pink and green ray light. So you can work with pink or green stones. So this stone was a green stone, and I actually just put two and two together about that and the heart chakra right now as I was just saying this as I'm talking here on the podcast. So I was told to throw one piece at a time and to wait for the ripples. So I took the first piece. I really didn't, there was no other intention other than I was asked to do this and I knew something was coming. So there was no prayer, there was no mantra. I was just following orders and offering this to the water. So I threw the first piece. I threw it as hard as I could. It did hit the water. And when it hit the water, I was told to wait for the ripples, and it started to ripple as water does into these concentric ripples. Then, as that was still occurring, I was told to throw the second piece in the same general direction. I threw the second piece. It created a second concentric, its own concentric, circle within circle within circle, but it was overlapping the concentric circles from the first piece of the crystal that I threw. So I'm watching this, and it kind of reminded me of the Vesica Pisces. How the two circles they were overlapping. So you have the divine masculine, the divine feminine there. And then something happened that kind of took my breath away. And what happened was I did not have a third piece to throw, but a third concentric circle of its own kind of branched off of the other two concentric circles of their own freestanding. And there were now three concentric circles that were linked, even though I never threw a third stone. And I was standing there thinking, is this really happening? Am I imagining this? How could this third concentric circle of its own independence have started without something starting it? And it was one of those moments that even though I never doubt spirit, I still was standing there thinking, wait a minute, this is not actually physically possible because I did not throw a third piece of this crystal. Like, what is happening right now? And then I heard her say, you have now created the three ponds, the pond of mercy, the pond of suffering, and the pond of nirvana. You cannot make these kinds of stories up. I honestly couldn't believe that I channeled what I channeled because of the depth and, again, almost like the concentric circles, the connectedness, the overlapping of how each part of that channel piece of the meditation just played upon the next part in perfect precision. But then to stand there and see these crystals forming what I had just formed with words was just spellbinding. And I feel that what she was trying to show me and help me understand is that when we believe, when we trust, when we create space for the energy of the higher metaphysical planes and working with all of these divine feminines and gods and goddesses, angels, spirit guides, higher light beings, when we make space for that in our life, no matter how we do it, it could be taking a nature walk, it could be journaling, it could be praying, making an altar, making a piece of art, writing a piece of poetry, writing a book, whatever it is, when we make that space for that, we actually we bring the energy in because it's our free will that has to welcome it in. And then that energy becomes just like those circles on that water that I was witnessing. It becomes miraculous. It becomes tangible. It now comes into our actual realm of existence and becomes real. And it's because we are welcoming it, we are trusting it, we are allowing it, we are making space for it. So when you work with KWAN YIN's energy, she is inviting you to look at the places in your life where mercy for yourself or mercy for others around you, mercy for the collective, mercy for situations, whether it be your job environment, your spirit life, how you look at and treat your body. Mercy for your upbringing, mercy for your parents, your siblings, or anyone in your life, friendships where things have seemingly gone astray. Where can you open your heart and look at it through mercy's eyes as if you are embodying her? Say to yourself, how can I feel her within me, looking through my eyes in a different way so that I can see this situation through the eyes of mercy? Now, this does not mean that you ever put yourself in a situation or keep yourself in a situation where you are being physically, mentally, emotionally, or in any way abused or mistreated or having other people's conscious energy directed at you in a negative way. We do have to protect our energy. We do need to know when it's time to walk away from people and situations. But that doesn't mean that we can't have mercy and forgiveness for those people. We can have mercy that they cannot or will not see the conflict, the strife, the drama, the pain that they are creating for themselves or for others or for a family situation. The truth is that there are times that people are choosing that lower vibration. They are choosing to learn the more difficult way. And mercy means allowing them to be where they are for as long as they need to be until they start to see things through higher, clearer vision. One of the greatest things that you can do for yourself and others is to walk away from a situation with calmness, without anger, without explosion, even without sacred rage. You can express that maybe within your own home, in your own way, but, not putting that energy out into the world. I'm not saying that anybody should ever punish themselves or feel bad eternally and beat themselves up because they said something the wrong way or they used a curse word or they yelled at somebody who was hurting them or damaging them in some way. What I'm saying is try your best to see a situation, to ask yourself, is it time to leave this situation for my highest good, for that person's highest good? And realize that sometimes the greatest love that you can create in that situation is just to let that person be who they are and see life the way they do and live life the way they do, while at the same time removing yourself from a situation where you feel that you are in danger or you are being abused or mistreated. And to do that with compassion and mercy and peace, to walk away gently, quietly, assuredly, but with peace in how you handle it. And you can even use the analogy of the lotuses, all the beautiful colored pastel, pink, lavender, blue, hot pink, creamy white, iridescent lotuses floating on the pond of life. You can use that metaphor and think about that God loves and believes in the beauty, the opening, the awakening of every single lotus, every single person, even the lotuses that are struggling. God, Goddess, Spirit knows, will rise to the top, will turn their face to the sun eventually, will open in this brilliant, giving, perfect way for them, for themselves in their own divine timing. Remember what I just said before, which is the lotus will always become the lotus, even when it's a tiny little seed struggling to find its place in the mud, even when it's trying to wiggle and move its way up at the very first stage, and then as it's pushing and moving up through the water, at all stages, the lotus is only the pristine lotus. From the very first thought, before it actually becomes a seed, it's already the lotus. And that is how the divine sees us, as its magnificent, beautiful creations, that we will rise, we will remember, we will claim our birthright of the light, and we will come to the destination of being the awakened, ever blooming, ever in bloom lotus. We already are that before we become it. And herein lies the task, which is that if Spirit believes in us, trusts us, knows this about us, then who are we to not see that in ourselves? Who are we to not see that in every other fellow being that walks this planet as they become their full embodied lotus? So it's important for you to take some time now to really do some journaling and internal searching and seeking, and say to yourself, where do I want to offer more mercy to myself? Where have I been so incredibly hard on myself? It could be something like just never loving your body your entire life. Not that that's just something, but that's not something that we think about, It's just so ingrained in us to do that. But it also could be something really, that we would probably judge ourselves for more. Something like maybe we hurt somebody deeply at one point in our life. We said all the wrong things. We screamed, we yelled, we carried on, we manipulated, we betrayed, or worse, we consciously abused and took advantage of somebody. So sit and say to yourself, let me take inventory. Let me really, maybe for the first time ever in my life, sit down and be face to face with the suffering that I've caused for myself in my own life, with my patterns, beliefs, stubbornness, way of seeing the world, anger, etc., without judgment, always without judgment. Let me look really at the suffering that other people have caused in my life, that I have suppressed, that I have pretended has not truly hurt me, that I have minimized so that I could stay in certain relationships, that I have outright denied, or all of the deep suffering and trauma that we endure, that we try to kind of wish away with all of the various addictions that we get ourselves involved in. I always like to say that, the word addict is such a poorly connotated word in our society. But the truth is, we all have addiction personalities. It's just, what is your addiction? Some people are very addicted to drama, listening to drama, creating drama. Some people don't like to create it, but they love to get involved in other people's drama, which really isn't social media a minefield for that. Some people are very addicted to food and the way that they utilize food to kind of manipulate or control their body. Of course, people are addicted to alcohol is probably the number one thing in our society, which is also glamorized and socially acceptable. It's the number one way that we try to think that we're de-stressing, when in fact we are stressing out every single body part and system of our body. Alcohol is a toxin, and from the very first sip, it actually starts to affect your brain, your lungs, your heart, everything. So yes, there's lots of ways we ease our suffering. We become addicted to shopping. We become addicted to going places. Some people even become addicted to martyrdom, meaning that they put everybody else above them so that they feel that they're a good person. And they are a good person. It's not that they feel that way, but they like that feeling of doing things for other people, not even looking at themselves, serving other people, serving the world, serving the planet, serving the animals. And all of that is wonderful. But the way that we ascend, KWAN YIN is saying to me, is through doing our own inner work. It cannot be bypassed. So we really have to sit down with deep heart chakra energies, her energies, mercy, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, self-love, and really, really do the work around the suffering and the trauma that we have endured in our life, no matter what direction it's coming from, whether you've been creating it for yourself. Probably most of our suffering is created by ourselves, or other people or other situations. So she's saying an important thing to point out is that there's, I can't give you right now, and she can't give you the one be all way to work on your suffering and to bring in the mercy. You can work with her and surround yourself in her energy however you would like to do that. Like we said before, you can have a journal where you write back and forth to her. Maybe you write to her and then you sit and you listen and you auto write what you hear her saying to you as far as guidance and wisdom. You can get an oracle card reading with someone else. You can work with a KWAN YIN oracle deck. There is one by Alana Fairchild that is out there available. You can do energy healing. You can do a Reiki session. You can do meditations with her. There's an innumerous amount of ways. You can go for a walk. If you have a beautiful pond by you, you can go for a walk because you know her energy is always going to be around fish and ponds, or maybe even a lake. So you can sit and you can really think, maybe do I want to paint dragonflies or dragons today? Do I want to write a poem about her? And ask her for guidance within the poem for something in my life or healing. The point is that there are a multitude of possibilities of ways to heal and do the shadow work with mercy. You have to find your own way. There's going to be some personalized one-on-one inner work that just you're going to do. And then there also will probably be times that you're going to need to reach out. Maybe you want to reach out and get involved with a woman's circle, a goddess circle, like what I create. There's usually, you can find one in just about any community. And if you can't find one, which I couldn't many years ago, so I created one because I needed it so much in my life to have that sense of community with other women where we were coming towards each other in a way that was in a divine feminine kind of way, supporting each other, looking at each other as sacred sisters, really listening to each other, seeing each other, allowing each other. Sometimes those things don't happen in our real feminine relationships because there's a lot of ego involved, and society is teaching us all the time that we want to compete with other women and we want to be prettier and we want to have more jewelry than them. I don't know, whatever, whatever it is, the backstabbing, the gossiping. You probably had those groups of female friends at some point in your life where when the one friend couldn't come to an event or a dinner or whatnot, she was the one that everybody talked about. And I mean, talked about. That's creating suffering because you are now directing energy in a way that she's not there. And you're bringing her down. You're talking about her stuff, what you think her downfalls, her weaknesses are when she's not there. Think about the type of suffering you're creating when you do that, because everything is energy. And that energy, she will feel it on some level. And you are putting that energy out into the collective of all women instead of what the energy that is raised at a woman's circle or a goddess circle, where the energy is pure acceptance and love and understanding. And I'm here to empathize and to hear your story. What can I learn from your story? What can you learn from my story? How can our weaknesses become strengths? How can I help you do that? How can you teach me to do that? Do you see the difference there? So the important thing is that you find a way, your way, to do the work of your life, because suffering and trauma gets stored in the body, and that energy over time has to find a way to express itself. So again, that's going to be very different for different people. Some people might have migraine headaches ongoing. Other people might develop heart disease over time if you've had a lot of heartbreak that you have not actually looked at, that you've been pushing away, or even more so if you've been perseverating on it, you're actually, in a sense, growing that anger that you're holding onto within your heart. So I'm not going to get into that too much, but overall, that's the general premise of why. Why is it important to do the shadow work, the suffering work, the trauma work? I mean, it all can kind of be combined of our lives. And it's so that you can be free. It's so that you can heal. It's so that you can understand that no matter what every other lotus is doing on that pond, that it doesn't necessarily in the end, by your own free will and choice, have to affect your energy and your vibration that you put out. The energy that you store and hold on to becomes a vibration that you then emit and put out into the world. So in KWAN YIN's case, she chose to walk the path of having utter mercy, no matter what somebody was doing, saying, hurting her, no matter who it was, even if it was somebody as important as her father. She said, I will not allow this to affect my divine vibration. So I will choose to have mercy and to forgive. It doesn't mean that we accept, bitterness and abuse and manipulation and betrayal from people. We don't want to become those kind of people. I always think of a quote by Pablo Picasso where he said there are two kind of women, doormats or goddesses. And I remember when I heard that, it just blew the roof off of my head, because it was such a simple statement, just a few words, but so incredibly powerful for the time that it came into my life. It made me realize all the areas of my life that I was being a doormat instead of a goddess. So I am not insinuating that you should be a doormat. There has to be a balance. There has to be a balance with all things in life. The universal truth is that forgiveness is mandatory. It is spiritually mandatory if you are going to heal and evolve. So you kind of have to wrap your mind and your heart around that and understand that you're going to have to find a way, like KWAN YIN, to get to that place of mercy and forgiveness for yourself and for others. I mean, some people start by saying, well, I'm just doing it for myself so that I can heal and move forward, but I'm never going to forget what you did to me. Well, that's a good first step. But if we want to get to the status of KWAN YIN, we have to get to the next step, which is that we also extend that forgiveness and mercy to the person who has hurt us very, very deeply. And it's amazing, the opening, I'm seeing the lotus again, how every petal on that lotus just opens up to the sun. When you take those steps, when you finally open your heart and you say, I surrender all of this to you, KWAN YIN. Please take this anger, this pain, this upset, this abandonment, this betrayal, this manipulation that I've been holding onto from this other person or myself. Please take it and teach me how to let it go. Teach me how to open my flower. And you feel that even as I'm saying it now, in this, this 10 seconds of me talking, you have to feel that in your system. I know I feel it, that my flower wants to open. My flower wants to be free. It wants to bloom. It wants to be vibrant. It wants to join life again. It wants to see the beauty of life again. That's what we are designed to do and be. And we know it. We know it. This is a knowing. It's not about the mind. It's not about intelligence. It's not about analytics. It's a deep inner knowing. They are different things. And we know we are meant to flower. We know the other people in our lives are meant to flower. That's why it hurts so deeply when somebody betrays you in some way, because you look at them and you think, I know who you are. I know your holiness. I know your goodness. Why? Why are you acting from this place? Because we know that we are goodness. We know that we are bright lights. So I'm going to close by telling you a personal share story of how KWAN YIN actually appeared in my life and at what time of my life. I think these stories are so interesting. I know when I listen to podcasts, these are the stories that I gravitate toward. I love to hear people's stories about when their psychic intuitions and gifts opened, how different light beings and forms of spirit come through to them. I just find these stories endlessly fascinating. So I'm going to share my KWAN YIN story with you. So I had been working with the Divine Feminine for a while before I actually met KWAN YIN. And for me, it all started with getting involved with different spirit groups online and seeing all these pictures of women sitting in circles, these beautiful circles with flower petals and oracle cards and drums, and they were all dressed in these long, beautiful, bright, flowing gowns, and I really didn't know what that was many, many years ago. I was fascinated by it. I was drawn to it because I knew whatever it was that I needed it in my life. And so I started to read, and I realized it was called Women's Circles and Goddess Circles. And I thought, well, what is this? And, I didn't know, was it something you signed up to go to for a weekend? Or I really knew absolutely nothing about it. But I knew I had to have it in my life. And because I couldn't find it locally, within an hour's drive, I ended up starting, I didn't even know I was doing this, but at the time I had something going on in my life, which was that my uncle was missing. He was involved with drugs, talking about addiction, and I was just desperate to help him. And I was just so upset that he just didn't want the help that our family was trying to offer, and we did everything that we possibly could. And I won't get into all the details of that, but when he would go missing, I would be so terrified, and I would just think that I need to help somebody. I need to help somebody. And I started to get this idea about going to a women's shelter. I had no idea what I was going to do there. I just kept hearing it that I should go to a women's shelter. I should go to a women's shelter. And oh gosh, I just had a revelation as I'm talking to you here. And one day I was sitting on my swing, and I had a dragonfly, and this is the revelation because I'm sitting here looking at a piece of artwork as I'm recording this podcast of KWAN YIN that I just finished yesterday, and I had painted a dragonfly on her third eye. And I never made this connection because here I am thinking that I'm about to tell you the story of when I first met KWAN YIN, but I'm realizing that it goes back even further, that she came to me through that dragonfly. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't make this connection, because she is associated with dragonflies. Anyway, I was sitting on my swing having my morning coffee, and this little dragonfly landed next to me on my swing. But what was so unusual about it is that the dragonflies, they land for a couple seconds and they're gone. You know how, they're like hummingbirds. They boom, they're gone. This dragonfly was not leaving. It literally sat next to me on my swing. That morning, I remember my dog always wants to be with me on the swing, but for some weird reason, he didn't. He was like just laying in a patch of sun on the deck, and I thought, well, this is really strange because Riley is all about having his little butt cushioned. But for whatever reason, I think, it happened because the dragonfly needed to land there. And when the dragonfly landed, it basically said to me, it's time to call the women's shelter. You've been putting this off. You know it's something you need to do. Get up and go do it now. And I was just mesmerized, and I was just watching this dragonfly and thinking, I can't believe this dragonfly is staying here, just sitting here as long as it is. It felt like an eternity. And I said to the dragonfly, years ago when I would tell this story, I was at the beginning of like the doorway of my awakening. And so I always felt like a crazy person when I would tell people this story. Now it just feels normal because ever since I've gotten certified and become a Reiki master, I talk to all kinds of creatures and beings from this planet and other planets. But at the time it felt very, very strange, like I was losing my mind. But still I said to the dragonfly, I don't even know what I would do there. I know I need to go and I feel it too, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid to go. What am I supposed to be doing? And what if I fail? And I will never forget the dragonfly's response. The dragonfly said to me, "You were born to do this." And I could literally cry right now just saying that, because I knew in that moment, again, it was an inner knowing that that was the truth. And something in me just got right up. I mean, I literally got right up, brought the dog inside, went upstairs to my office, got on the computer, Googled women's shelters for my area, called the first one that came up, spoke to the coordinator, said to her, I did not tell her that a dragonfly just told me to call. Because then there would have never been an initial women's circle in my community. I told her my name. I told her a little bit about my background, that I had a bachelor's degree in psychology, that I had worked as a case manager for kids with disabilities, and that I wanted to volunteer in my community. I was not yet a Reiki practitioner when I started this. I didn't tell her that I was having a divine feminine goddess awakening, and that I had been working with the goddess in various forms, which at that point had mostly been Goddess Bridget, because I was really doing a lot of poetry and art was coming through. And that was it. And you know what she said to me? She said, "Oh my gosh, we have been looking for someone exactly like you." So I tell this story in case you are hesitating with anything in your life, that you just have this inner knocking that keeps saying to you, hello, you know this is who you are. Hello. I'm knocking on my coffee table right now. You know you're supposed to be doing this. Hello. Yes, we know you're scared to death, but we also want to tell you, you came to do this. You were born to do this. You can do this. Believe in yourself. So I ended up going to the shelter. I did my volunteer interview, and I ended up going to the shelter as a volunteer, not getting paid, every week it was a women's shelter, so it ended up being a women's circle, every week for 2 years. And the only reason I stopped going, because I absolutely loved it, was unfortunately because the shelter just started to kind of disrespect me. It's a very long story, but sometimes I would go and there would be nobody there, but nobody would call me. And I would say, well, I just drove 30 minutes. Can you just send me a text or call me? And it was just one of those situations where at the time I was very upset, because I wanted to do it for the rest of my life. And I couldn't understand why it seemed to be falling apart. But now that I'm doing circles in the community, and I've done other things with my life, like become a Reiki master and write books and create an oracle deck, and, offer readings and distance Reiki for people, I see that it was just the universe making space. It wasn't me. It wasn't suffering meant to be suffering for me, to make me feel bad, to make me feel like what I had done there wasn't, worthy all those years. It was just the universe giving me a little nudge and saying, it's time now to fly this nest and to go and to fly it toward other things in your life. And, in the moment when something is falling apart, and it's something that we love dearly and are very passionate about it, we think, oh my gosh, I this means so much to me, or I've worked so hard for this. Why is this relationship, this job, this hobby, this whatever, part of my spiritual life, whatever, why is it falling apart? And it's because the door is opening for something else. We're not, life on Earth, and Mother Earth shows us this with all of her cycles and seasons. Life is about change and transformation and transcendence. if we're going to do the same thing and be the same person all the time, there's no point to be on earth, because we're here to evolve and grow. So that's why it's important to look at aspects of your life and think, what have I outgrown? Where do I need to expand more? So, yeah, I mean, I just think it's so cool that I just made the connection that it was actually KWAN YIN that came to me in the dragonfly. All these years later, I've always just thought, it was dragonfly spirit. There was a spirit animal. But now, because you see how things fall into line, and this is what you have to look at in your own life, there's no denying it now. I'm making an entire podcast about KWAN YIN, and something told me to tell the story about the goddess circles and the dragonfly, and I'm looking at the artwork of her that I painted with the dragonfly, and it's like she's saying, hello, that was me within the spirit of the dragonfly all those years ago. And that's okay. Even people who are psychic and intuitive, we don't see everything all at once. All of us see things when we're meant to see them, when we're meant to make the connection. But it's important to note here that, these ascended masters, gods, goddesses, angels, light beings, spirit guides, and your higher self, which is an ascended master. Your higher self is an ascended master. That's actually another podcast that I did here on the Running on Reiki podcast. So you can go back and look for that in the library. And that was a really interesting one that I channeled with Saint Germain and Lady Portia. And that's what they told me to tell people. So ascended masters, goddesses, etc., like we just said, are always with us. They come in various forms because they are shapeshifters and they are able to change form. And they will appear to you maybe different than they appear to someone else. KWAN YIN may come to me as a dragonfly. She may come to you as, within a dragonstone crystal, or maybe as a fish, So they are able to easily change form. But the important thing that she wants me to say to people is that you should never look at them as being, and they've all told me this as I've been able to, speak with them telepathically since I've been practicing Reiki. This message has been hammered home many times for me to then share with other people, which is it is not to any benefit to ourselves to look at them as being outside of us or above us. We must realize that they are a part of us. And in fact, we are a part of them. We are a fractal of them. That I was listening to a podcast recently that I absolutely love. It's called Spirit Seekers. And you can find that on Spotify as well. And I love the two women that run that podcast. They are both just blasted open psychically. And you can just feel the light brightness of their energy. And they also talked about the fact that we're not separate from these ascended beings, that we are actually fractals of them. And we come to Earth in order to, as we've been talking this whole time here, to walk their walk and talk their talk. How would Jesus, how would KWAN YIN, how would Goddess Bridget, whoever it is you're working with in the moment, how would he put themselves out into the world? And how can I do that as well? We are here to shine their light, to bring their divine vibration to the planet, and to bring it into the tangible. So we're not lesser than them. So to finish my story about KWAN YIN, didn't know all that was going to come up. So let me get back to my original story. So the time that I thought I initially met KWAN YIN, I will tell you about now, though apparently it was through that dragonfly. So what ended up happening is that when my time at the women's shelter ended, I started to get whisperings that it was now time to move the Women's Goddess Circle into the community. And it took me a good probably year and a half, maybe even a little bit longer to actually make that move. Because I then went back into, even though I had been doing this for 2 years with you would think, women that had times of being abused, homeless, they were running from partners. They maybe had drug addiction problems, had their children taken away from them. I mean, women that had serious suffering. And there were times at the women's shelter that it was challenging. Though some of the women were very grateful, but there were also times that women just didn't want anything to do with I started out by talking about poetry, and we did art projects, and it eventually turned into talking about spirituality, because you can't really do something like poetry and art. Poetry and art is our creative spiritual expression. So it always ended up going to spirituality, and we did eventually get into talking about the goddesses, because through different culture and time, because they are such an empowering way for women to realign their energy with the goddess when they're in a very challenging time of their life. But there were times that, these were women, a lot of them who had lived on the street or had really difficult childhoods, and they were tough, they were tough women. They learned how to be tough. I was always very good at getting to their tenderness, but sometimes it was harder than other times. So most people would say, well, geez, taking a goddess circle out into the community is going to be a little bit easier than working with this particular demographic of women that were in a homeless shelter. But I was still nervous, because it was a different demographic of women. And I think it's just normal human reaction that even when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're aligned with your soul path, of course we still have hesitation. Of course we fall back into ego, fears, and anxiety. Am I going to be able to do it? How is it going to go this time? That kind of thing. But I did finally take the step to do it, and I found a most beautiful, beautiful souled woman in my community who actually has the biggest metaphysical store in the city, and she has a beautiful space that she offers for me to be able to do the various circles that I'm doing, and I'm actually now expanding it and doing other circles for men and women, and the whole journey has just been absolutely magical. And even though I get scared, just like somebody who gets up on stage, I always think about my favorite singer, Stevie Nicks, and she still says, in her 70s, that when she gets up on stage, that first 10 minutes, she's shaking like a leaf. And I still have that feeling every time I have a day like today. I'm going to be doing a Gaia circle tonight. I still get that feeling, but I still follow through, because the feeling of not following my path is much worse than that temporary feeling of, am I good enough? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to lead it? Am I going to be able to be there for people in the right way, how they need me? So it's that scale. I just got this image in my third eye of that scale. You have to balance it, because if I didn't do it, I would probably literally shrivel up and die inside, because it's my path. It's who I am. I was born to do it. And you know what it is that you were born to do. So to close this podcast, I'm going to backtrack a little bit now, away from the whole goddess circle part of my life, and tell you the story about how I thought that I initially met KWAN YIN, which was through when I decided to get involved with Reiki. So as soon as I had heard the word Reiki and chakras, and I don't remember what chakras, of course, I heard much earlier on in my life. Don't remember what part of my life it was. But then I started to really hear the word Reiki, and I understood that it was some sort of like healing energy practice, but I just resonated with it. It felt like something that I already knew. I knew I needed to go and get certified, but of course I put it off. I was, I have an Etsy shop, and that was really booming at the time. So I was very focused on that. And I still had kids that were fairly young, and, family life and all that. We always find reasons why we can't do that thing that we know we need to do for ourselves, right? But it got to the point that I just couldn't ignore the tugging of it anymore. So I signed up for my Reiki 1 and 2 certification. And when the day came to go, instead of being excited and elated, I was just a ball of emotions. I mean, I literally, like KWAN YIN, I'm looking at the art here, and I also painted her with tears, because she cries the tears for the world into her vase, and then they are alchemized into holy dew of healing. And I cried that day, to the point that I was like, then saying to myself, well, I can't go to this class now, because I look like I've been crying, and there's no amount of makeup that's going to hide this. And I didn't really know why I was crying, except that I was terrified. I was scared. And I had a friend at the time that said to me, well, you don't have to go, but I think you need to go. And that's what I needed to hear, that she held the space for me to allow me to feel what I was feeling in the moment, but then said to me, you need to go. And so I rallied myself, and I made myself go. And in typical Sherry fashion, when I got there and we all were introducing ourselves and telling our little story, I was honest, and I told everybody, you know, that I'd been crying that morning, and it really came to me that the reason why I was so scared to go, because I felt so comfortable with these women that were in the class. I was so comfortable with the Reiki master teacher from the moment I walked in there. And I knew that something big was about to happen. And that's why I had been crying, because I knew that going through this was going to completely shift and change my life, my perspective, everything. I didn't know in what way, but I knew. And let me tell you that that was exactly true. Because what happened for me is that immediately from Reiki 1, just from the first Reiki 1 class, when I went home and started practicing on myself and other people, I started to hear my spirit guides right from the get-go. And then after that, what started happening is that when I would practice Reiki, I started to have visions, and I would see all kinds of ascended masters come in, KWAN YIN, Jesus, various archangels, spirit guides, light beings from other dimensions that, you know, I didn't even know who they were. You know, elements of nature that were actually there to heal the person. It's like what happens when I do a distance Reiki for you is I get a personalized vision, and you are taken somewhere. It's usually something in nature or some sort of temple or crystal area. Sometimes it's very ethereal. It's like just floating. Sometimes we end up going to like a starseed nation. I've had things like that where people are like levitating in these like almost clear glass. It's not glass, but invisible. It's almost like invisible rooms. I don't even know how to describe it. Like the things that I see are just really magnificent. But so, you know, my soul, my higher self knew all of that was coming, and that I was going to have to acclimate all of that, because in the beginning, when all of that started to come through for me, I would walk around and say to my husband, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? I'm crazy. I'm crazy. And, you know, he really helped me and said, you need to stop saying that. You're not crazy. Like, you have gifts, and you were meant to open to these. So now I'm completely accepting of that. But in the beginning, it's, you know, it's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming. So on to my KWAN YIN visitation. So when you get certified in Reiki, you do your Reiki master teacher healer will give you an attunement. So I reckon this to be a ceremony. That's how I looked at it. That person who is now done their Reiki 1, 2, and 3 and has practiced for so many years, they are now able to attune you to the Reiki symbols. So it's not really, you know, you seem like, you know, I don't really like the word certification, because it sounds like, again, it sounds very human, like you're taking a class, you know, and that's not what Reiki is. It's spiritual, and it's a ceremony. You are being initiated into Reiki. So after we finish our classes that we did for over various weekends for Reiki 1 and 2, then we did our Reiki 1 and 2 attunement. So what we did was we went into this small room. We sat on chairs in a circle, and it was very beautiful. We had music and crystals and salt lamps and all that. And it's a very quiet ceremony. You keep your eyes closed, because you don't want to be staring at the person across from you. And the Reiki master is really standing in front of you and not really saying too much. There's a little bit of talking, but she's mostly just, you can feel her standing in front of you, and she's like putting the symbols into your head, into your heart. And so what was happening for me during this time is that I was very emotional. I had tears running down my face, because the energy was just so palpable and so potent and so beautiful. And I was overwhelmed in a beautiful kind of way, in a mystical kind of way. And I felt that something was happening. I knew something was happening. And I was very grateful that we all had our eyes closed, because something started to happen within my body. And what was happening was, as I was sitting in my chair, my head kept leaning back off of my neck as far as it could go, just leaning back, and I couldn't stop it. And that was starting to scare me a little bit. And I had to calm myself and say, just, you know, I didn't want to stop the ceremony. I didn't want to interrupt it for anybody else, but I was a little scared, because it was involuntary. And when I would say to my body, stop doing that, my body was not listening. My head just, It wasn't jerking. It was very slowly back. Then it would come back to equilibrium. Then it would lean back. Then it would, almost as if somebody was kind of like gently tugging my head back. So when the attunement came to an end, and it's not a very long process. It's really not. Like, maybe depending on how big your Reiki group is, I think I only had 3 other women in mind. So, it was maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes total. But when we came out of it and, she put the lights on, I was completely just almost not in my body. I have never felt a sensation like that before, and I haven't since, in the aspect that I was like a jelly body. I really couldn't, she said, everybody can, when you're ready, get up and just go back to the classroom table in the other room. And I said to her, oh, I don't know, something's going on with me right now. And I said, I just feel like I feel a little dizzy. I can't really, my limbs feel weak. And she said, all right, just sit there for a while. And then once I was able to move a little bit, I actually forced myself to move sooner than I should have, because I didn't want to interrupt anybody else's experience or make it all about me. So I got up and I went out and said, oh, is it okay if I go to the bathroom? And I kind of pulled myself together. I got a drink and came back to the class, and she started the class part of it again. And I remember looking at the clock, and it was like a good, probably almost 45 minutes before I literally felt normal in my body. So at the end of the Reiki class, I don't remember if it was after that attunement or it was at the very, very tail end, because it was many years ago now. I had stayed after and ended up talking to my Reiki master teacher just blabbing. And I don't remember the entire conversation. I wasn't looking to get information from her, and it was just a conversation that ended up extending. And so she looked at me at one point and she said, "Do you have a relationship with the goddess KWAN YIN? Because you've been talking a lot about your goddess awakening, during our free talks and things like that in here." And I said, I don't. I said, I do know who KWAN YIN is, just because I've been so fascinated with reading about goddess culture. I said, but I've not worked with her personally or called her in. I don't really know anything about her other than, that they consider her like the Asian Mother Mary. And she said to me, well, she knows you. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, she said to me, KWAN YIN was standing behind you the entire time that I was doing the attunements on you. And I said, oh my gosh. And I said, my head kept going back, and I was so like a little embarrassed that I felt like I had no control of my body. And she said that was her. And, she's there for you. She's here to help you with your Reiki gifts. And I was just completely blown away. And then it made sense to me. But, before that time in my life, I had not had that type of, physical interaction. Like, it never dawned on me that somebody was kind of tugging at my head. I just thought that my body was doing something weird. So then, to make the story even richer and deeper, when I got home, I had a Reiki master friend who lived on the other side of the country. And she asked, I told her I had been nervous about going. And she told me that, I was going to be fine. She would pray for me. And so I told her what had happened and what the teacher had said to me about KWAN YIN. And she said, oh my gosh, Sherry, she said, I knew how nervous you were. So I set up an altar for you, and I prayed to KWAN YIN. And I can't remember if she said she had a little statue of KWAN YIN. And she said, I asked KWAN YIN to be with you. So that just gives me, chills and delight just even talking about it now, because right there is telling you the power of prayer, that when we call in one of these higher entities of light for ourselves or others, they will appear. They will appear. And sometimes we end up thwarting a situation. We can't blame it on them. It's our own feelings of, not trusting ourselves or doubting ourselves. But trust me, if you call them in, they are there. So I've always felt that KWAN YIN has been I look at the different ways that angels and beings have showed up for me in spirit, and it's always, they're there for me at a certain time in my life. And KWAN YIN, I feel, is my Reiki goddess. She's there to help me assist other people with Reiki. And teaching people to have, she just said this to me, tell them that too. Teaching people to have mercy for themselves. Have a little mercy for yourself. Believe that you are the light, Let the light in like the lotus and believe that you are the light. So one final story revolving around KWAN YIN. As I began to practice, I had a friend that actually said, oh, I'd rather come to the house. Do you mind if I come to the house and you actually do Reiki? I'd like to spend time with you. And I said, sure. So this person came over, and at that time I had a little room set up in my house that I used to do Reiki just for family and friends. And when she came over, I'm trying to remember the progression here. We just sat on my couch, in my living room at first, and she told me about some things that were going on in her life and what she was looking for from the Reiki. Then we went upstairs, and I did the Reiki, and it had nothing to do with KWAN YIN. And KWAN YIN actually did not come into the Reiki session. I'm trying to remember who came into the Reiki session. I feel it was Goddess Bridget. Anyway, there had been no discussion of KWAN YIN or anything like that. So after we did the Reiki session, we talked about what came through. We had all the, spiritual aha moments and the connections, and her grandmother had come through, and it was just, it was a magical session. And then when she was saying goodbye, she said to me, oh, geez, I totally forgot. She said, when I was driving over here, she said, I'd put a bag of stuff together that I was going to take to donate. She said, I had this statue in my house for quite some time. I got it at a flea market, and I don't even know why I got it, because when I brought this statue home, it just never really felt like it was for me. But, I knew that it was a goddess, so I felt weird like getting rid of it. But then today I thought, I don't know, I just have to clean things up. So she said I put it in the bag. And as I put the statue in the bag, because I was going to go have a couple errands to do today besides coming here for Reiki, she said when I was driving here, I heard a voice that said, give the statue to Sherry. So I kid you not, this is when she was saying goodbye. She's standing at my door, and she's saying, oh, I remembered about this statue. And she said, let me run out to the car and get it. And I literally had shivers through my whole body, because I knew she was going to come back with a KWAN YIN statue. Even though we had not talked about KWAN YIN in any aspect that day, I just knew. And sure enough, she came back, and she was holding this beautiful, porcelain glass statue of KWAN YIN, and I nearly fainted. And she said, what? Because she saw the look on my face. And so then I ended up telling her the whole story about KWAN YIN coming through to me during my Reiki certification. So this is not just another story of how KWAN YIN shows up for me. It's deeper than that, It's showing us that we should never ignore our intuition. When something calls to us, whether it's picking up a statue at a flea market, or I should call this old friend that I haven't talked to in 10 years, or I really need to work on healing this part of how I talk to and look at my body. Whatever it is, no matter how small or how big, we need to follow through, because spirit in all of its forms will find a way to get to you, not just through your personal experiences, but through other people. So in this situation, my friend Stacy had that statue in her house, and she was meant to give it to me. Of course, I also believe that KWAN YIN came through for her during that time, but then it's almost as if KWAN YIN said to her, my work with you is done at this time in your life, and now I need you to take this statue of me to Sherry so that she has another synchronization, that she understands. See, those moments make us believe. They make us believers in spirit. And KWAN YIN was now saying, I need to move along, like my story before. Oh, I'm not going to do the goddess circle here. Well, then I need to move along and do the goddess circle here. Or maybe I need to do something different than a goddess circle. But what she was saying is, I've done my work with you, Stacy, and now I need to move on. I need you to take me to Sherry so that Sherry understands that, yes, in fact, I have been with her all along. at these different parts of her life, in helping her set up the goddess circle, in helping her feel comfortable with becoming, remembering, not becoming, but remembering that she already is a Reiki healer. So life is endlessly magical to me. And when you look at life through those magical eyes, everything changes, everything shifts. I would never want to go back to the person that I was before my goddess awakening, my spiritual awakening, even though it has been a little bit of a rough ride and a lot of, acclimating of things and incubating in things and a lot of shadow work. It's not been all butterflies and rainbows, and it's not all love and light. You have to do the shadow work. You have to do the suffering work. You have to do the trauma work. You have to do the mercy work for yourself and others. But it's so worth it because it gives you a sense of aliveness and a knowingness of who you are that you can never get from an ego-based life of ambition and making money and climbing ladders and having hordes of friends that you don't really talk to on a real level. Or looking towards material things or relationships with other people to fill you in ways that you are not filling yourself. So I'm anticipating this was a very long podcast, but I just talk until I know that it's time to close. And I do feel it's time to close now. So I'm going to send you the Reiki energy, the chakra, at your solar plexus, sealing the healing and all of the wisdom that we have gained today through KWAN YIN. I'm going to read a closing prayer that I wrote for the Goddess Circle in a second, but first I would just like to thank you for joining me on this Running on Reiki podcast. I'm very honored to show up. I really love channeling anything that helps people open to their light. And I just want to give you some basic information. You can get all of the web pages in the podcast notes if you're interested in booking a session with me. I do distance Reiki anywhere in the world. I do oracle card readings, and you can check out my Dream a Little Reiki webpage by hitting the link in the podcast bio. I also do original channeled spirit art of you as goddess, your self-love portrait. I do past life art, spirit guide art, spirit animal, guardian angel, tree of life, or your beloved goddess art, and all kinds of chakra art in my dreamalittledesigns.etsy.com shop. I have written 2 Goddess Awakening books that you can also find in my Etsy shop. I have created a Divine Feminine Call Her In Oracle card deck, which is also in my Etsy shop. My books are also available on Amazon. So if you don't live in the United States, you're better off buying my books on Amazon. My books are called Crowned, Becoming the Woman of My Dreams, The Missing Things Were Goddess Wings, Sherry Sharp, and my second book is called Call Her In, Soulspeak from the Sacred Feminine, Sherry Sharp. So Reiki Goddess blessings, and let's close with this prayer of gratitude to KWAN YIN. And I will see you next time on the Running on Reiki podcast. And if you'd like to send me a message, I would love to hear how this podcast episode shifted you, opened you, awakened you to KWAN YIN. You can email me at runningonreiki@gmail.com. That's capital R, and the rest is lowercase. So let's take a deep breath and do our closing prayer of gratitude to KWAN YIN. Mother KWAN YIN, Goddess of graceful mercy, we thank you for your presence here today with us. We are grateful for the way you have shifted our hearts today. Teach us the way of staying in our center of divine alignment with the healing powers of love's way. For love is the only way home in any situation. May we rise just a little stronger to your unfaltering way of forgiving our enemies, or any way we have been an enemy to ourselves, and staying focused on the temple of holy truth, which is that holding on to bitterness only makes fear harden our hearts. We rise now to the task of surrendering and analyzing why anyone does anything that is not of love. It is only our place as your priestesses to shower all in transforming love. Love. Life may become muddied when we forget the light in others. So right now, we clear the path by radiating your motherly medicine so that all ego suffering of this earth may calmly lift. We must remember that all are loved always. If Goddess loves this way, so shall we aspire to do so. So mote it be. Goddess blessings, everyone. I send you so much love. And please remember, you are light, you are love, and you are blessed.